Hello there, Ruth.
Hello.
Welcome to the author chat, Ruth Rotkowitz. I have published your wonderful book, your wonderful novel, Escaping the Whale, last April. Is doing very well. And it is a novel which is quite exceptional because I usually publish only Holocaust memoirs. But since it has a definite Holocaust angle, I really wanted to have you on board. Ruth, can you tell me something about the book, please?
Okay. The novel is called Escaping the Whale. It's got the little whale on it. And the subtitle is The Holocaust is Over, but is it ever over for the next generation? Which tells you that the focus is on the second generation. There's sometimes we're called 2Gs. I am a 2G myself, so this is an experience I'm familiar with. And it's a subject that I feel has not really been seriously addressed in literature, especially in fiction, definitely not in fiction. And I have been told by readers that this fills a void, and it shows things that people sort of knew, even if they were living through it, but it was never validated. In the late 70s, I think it was, research started coming out about the inherited trauma, the stigma, the problems, the psychological problems that seemed to be transferred from the survivors to their children. There are many versions and many extremes of how the survivors were raising their children, extremes from people who talked about it constantly and the children were just like afraid of everything. The other extreme where they would never talk about it, they would never answer questions, even to the extreme that some denied that they were Jewish. They told the kids that they were Catholic usually. And very often the children found out when they were adults that the parents had hidden that. And the reactions varied. Again, some were resentful, some were understood that they brought such fear of being identified as Jews because of what they went through in Europe. They didn't believe that in this country it was going to be okay, and it was a way of blocking off, what you went through. Now, having lived my whole life as a 2G and being aware of my parents, they met in the States. And luckily, they did not make me totally crazy. I did that myself. But I was just always aware of things they had gone through, things they knew about, things that other people went through that they were aware of. But they were intent on building a life in America. They spoke English, only English. They worked, they made a life. But their social life was really involved with just family or other, survivors. And I just feel that it's a topic that needs to be looked at. There's stuff coming out now, research that inherited trauma can actually be a physical, manifest itself in the person physically. And I tried to cover in the novel not only the main character's problems, which do verge on the extreme. She approaches a mental breakdown at one point. And I think the whole issue of mental illness is also addressed this way. In her case, it's very much tied to this legacy of inherited trauma. And, but I have other characters and other research brought in to show that there are other ways that people react. There are other symptoms people react to. There are people, and I knew everything that's mentioned in the book, I knew of somebody that had that.
Yeah.
I have a friend who will not, she always makes sure her passport is up to date, her papers are in order in case she has to immediately flee the country. I know people who will not go in a subway train, any kind of train freaks them out, any kind of closed space, like an elevator. And it's funny because even for me, and I really feel like I wasn't terribly, affected. I know when I started college, and you could sit in any seat you want in the class, I always chose the back row near the door. in high school, you know, you were assigned seats, but in college you could pick your own. And I always wondered, why did I feel more comfortable there? I felt like in case I have to like run out, in case something happens, you know, the Nazis come in to arrest the whole class, I can run out. So I think that everyone's affected in some way.
Yes, yeah, fascinating. And Ruth, can you tell us something about the storyline of the book itself, so that people know what it
Okay.
is about? What you're
Okay. Well, my main character's name is Marsha Gold. She is 28. She lives in Brooklyn, which is part of New York, and she has her own apartment. She works at a large urban high school, and I do have experience with that environment. She used to be a history teacher, but when she had a very bad incident in the past of trying to teach about the Holocaust, and kids, you know, challenged it that it really happened, and she flipped. She just got so aggravated she couldn't handle that, and that also is, you know, it's hard to be detached about something that is so personal. And she eventually became a guidance counselor, and this is in 1980. There were not many women guidance counselors then, and so she's the only woman in the office, the only Jewish woman in the guidance office. So she feels like they're kind of wary of her a little bit, the other guidance counselors. And apparently there've been a lot more pregnancies at the school. And the men guidance counselors felt uncomfortable with that, so they started sending them to her. So that became her specialty, is dealing with these pregnant girls. And so she gets involved with them. She's very conscientious about her work. She fights for them, she advocates for them, and she discovers what I discovered myself. I used to do home instruction when I was living in New Jersey, and I had a lot of pregnant girls from high school. And you find out that there's no stereotype. All types of girls who were horrible students and didn't care about school, the girls who thought they could entrap their boyfriends into a marriage, the girls who were wonderful students and still planned to go to college. Just a wide range of students were getting pregnant. And so she's dealing with them. And she has other, you know, she has to deal with some other teachers. Her family is, you know, making her crazy a little bit. You know, she has parents. She has a younger sister and who's single and is with a boyfriend that the family hates. So she's trying to like mediate with that. She has an older brother who lives in the suburbs with a family, and she loves their children and visits them. And the sister-in-law is also a Holocaust survivor. And in fact, the sister-in-law goes with her to some meeting of Holocaust, you know, descendants. And the sister-in-law gets totally into sharing, you know, experiences, and Marsha can't take it. She runs out. Marsha's mental problems, you become apparent right away. Like in her drawer, she always has extra crackers, you know, just to be sure she'll never starve, which is also a very typical survivor thing. And she imagines whenever she comes back into her apartment, she thinks there are little animals in the closet. When she opens the closet door, she thinks she sees little eyes, maybe there's a rodent in there. And whether that's real or not, she really has an issue with her mental health that gets worse and worse. And then a couple of things happen that push her to the point where she can no longer hide these symptoms. She has a boyfriend. He's like Mr. Perfect to everybody else, but she's really not very comfortable with him. He's very judgmental. He has a plan, you know, what they're going to do. They're going to get engaged. They're going to get married. The parents, you know, expect that. He looks down on what she does, you know, her work. He kind of mocks it. But she starts, I don't know if I should say what eventually happens in the book. Something happens at school, and then something happens. It's 1980, so the Iranian hostage crisis is going on, and it's constant. Everyone is obsessed with it. All the people she knows are talking about it constantly. And I vividly remember that period when it's like you're always turning on the TV. What happened? Are they still alive? Did they do anything? And somebody made the comparison to me that it's like today with the, you know, the COVID-19 and now the racial unrest, that it's on the news constantly. We're always checking on it, that they felt there was a similarity with that. So the combination of what's going on in the news is like pushing her more and more into this mental frame of mind that is just totally destructive. She imagines, I mean, she can't look at a cucumber being cut without thinking of an arm being cut off. She's got these mental associations that are just driving her, crazy. So she has to deal with an unexpected emergency at the school, and then she has to deal with a second emergency that everyone has to face at the school. I don't know if you want me to say what they are.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. And then there's more news, from the Iranian crisis, and she just says, I got to get away. I can't take it. She gets on a plane to Mexico, to a resort town, and she thinks that in a different place with different people that she doesn't know, she can reinvent herself. She can get rid of her issues, of her demons, as she thinks of them, and relax and be a different person. What she finds out is, just like Jonah, when he got swallowed in the whale, he couldn't escape from who he was. And it just gets worse and worse there. Her symptoms take on another form. And being right on the ocean, I mean, she can't look out at the water without seeing a surfer and thinking, oh, he's going to drown. And if I don't report it, it'll be my fault. And then she has a dream that sharks are coming out of the water and attacking everyone, which is actually a dream I once had. I really am crazy. And then she just realizes that she has to go back and face her life and make some real decisions to change. Running to Mexico was not going to do it. So that's basically the plot summary.
Yeah. I think it's so well written, and also it's very witty. It is, of course, a serious book dealing with serious issues, but at the same time, there's so much wit in there. I thought it was really good. Ruth. Marcia is the protagonist of the book.
Yeah.
One question: do you think a book like this, a novel like this, has any appeal outside of the Jewish readers' audience? What is your opinion of that?
I know it does, actually. I have heard from someone with a Chinese background. I have heard from someone with an Indian background. People who are the children of immigrants relate to this. They have told me that. They sometimes send me, in my culture, like there's a thing where somebody won't wear stripes, which is a very typical reaction of the association to concentration camps. She said, for culture, I think it was the color red, like certain things that they relate to, and the idea of being the child of immigrants, that your parents went through a lot and then expect a lot from you. So there's a kind of pressure to make their suffering and their sacrifices worthwhile, to live your life the way they expected. Actually, I knew of a case of an Indian girl in high school. She was in a regular high school and all, in all honors classes, very smart. And she got involved with a Caucasian boy. I think he was Jewish. And they had to keep their romance a secret from her parents. They would have been horrified. They didn't want her with somebody who was not Indian. Eventually, they broke up, and she did marry an Indian guy that I think her parents, I don't know if they actually arranged, but set up in some way. And that was not that long ago. So for any kind of immigrant group, going through what you would go through when your parents came from another country and they want you to assimilate and be American, but they also want you to still be what they are, and still hold on to their culture.
Right, yeah, with its in many difficulties, yeah. Ruth, is there one final thing you would like to say? Is there anything else you would love to?
Yeah. Well, I feel that there are a lot of issues that I touch on, and everyone picks up and reacts to different things. I've had people react to Marcia's mental state. Psychologists tell me, how did you know this? This is exactly how this would happen. They're diagnosing her, she's bipolar, she's, which may be. I'm very interested in that subject of mental illness and how it affects your life, especially because she's trying to hide it for the longest time. She thinks she can live kind of a double life, appear to be a normal, present as normal, but really inside have all these demons, which is why she hesitates to commit to this boyfriend. Says, how can I live with somebody who will see this part of me? And so I think the mental illness factor is very real because of her high school work. The issue of teen pregnancy and other teen problems come up. How history is taught, I really don't believe it can be taught objectively in any way. It keeps changing. How you get kids to recognize that, and the whole issue of inherited trauma and that it's real and what it does to you. It's not something to be dismissed. That's really what I want people to be aware of.
And all this packed in only one novel, Ruth, Escaping the Whale.
Right. Hey, here it is again.
That's a wonderful ending. Ruth, I thank you very much for this extremely interesting chat.
Thank you.
And we will